This isn't the episode I planned to share with you this week, but as it happened, the open Architect Office Hours call I hosted Monday was such a wealth of great conversation, I realized I needed to make it available to more than just the great folks who showed up live. So we got into everything from technical questions about structure for additions to comparing advice from different subcontractor specialists when they all disagree, to what you can do when some fool in the past painted your time capsule kitchen bone white, and how to moderate the cost of new built-ins, plus when you should or should not replace your original windows that still have the storms. These office hours calls are always amazing. They have community, spontaneity, and the ability to hear other people say your problems out loud so you know you're not alone. Hey there. Welcome back to Mid-Mod Remodel. This is the show about updating MCM homes, helping you match a mid-century home to your modern life. I'm your host, Della Hansman, architect and mid-century ranch enthusiast. You're listening to episode 2208. Before I share the call, I want to tell you that I heard the same story from two different mid-century homeowners in the same day, on Monday. Two people actually calling in on a Zoom from different hemispheres of the globe with the exact same story that I bet you will find extremely familiar too. That's because I hear it again and again and again as I talk to mid-century homeowners, and I'll spoil the end. It's part of the reason that I created the way that I work with clients today, the mid-century master plan method. Here's how it goes. A person, a mid-century homeowner, yourself perhaps, realizes that something's got to give. The kitchen is too small, too dowdy, too poorly remodeled by the last person, and it needs to be changed. So what do? Well, you start going through the phone book looking for contractors. This is a metaphor. Of course, you're Googling. But to quote one of the two folks who shared their story with me Monday, every single contractor they talked to had the same flip book of pictures of kitchens done over in HGTV white. Not what they were looking for. Okay, so maybe the problem is design. Instead of going straight to contractors, then you turn around and you start looking into finding a designer. You probably find a lot of interior specialists who offer start to finish service that may be priced as a percentage of the contracting work that will eventually be done. And this, while it feels more comprehensive, is also so expensive. And at the same time, doesn't quite feel like it's hitting that mid-century moment you've been looking for. There's still a lot of all-white kitchens in the example books. So this journey of option one, looking for contractors and realizing they don't understand what you're asking for and can't give it to you, and then talking to designers, option two, and realizing that it's really expensive, it's going to be more than you were asking for, and it's still not quite giving you the thing you wanted, there needs to be some secret third option, right? That is the search that had brought both of these folks to my door, and it is the problem that I have been working to solve for the last, depends on you count it, 6 years, maybe 8 years, maybe my entire life, trying to find a way to get design into the reach of regular homeowners, people who look and sound a lot like me, millennials perhaps, people buying their first homes, people buying modest mid-century ranch houses. And that is the secret third option, a mid-century master plan. The master plan method, following the step-by-step process of asking yourself what's most important to you, becoming a somewhat expert in your own home, nailing down your mid-century style, testing out options, and then having something easy to document so you can show to contractors or even designers who are going to help you carry the process out. That is the antidote to the perennial problem of what I was talking about last week on the podcast with the kitchen remodeling industrial complex, which is always pushing us to do more, to do something that's on trend, to do something that's going to be disposable. So, it tickled me. I mean, I was glad to hear the story from two different people because they had both found their way to the master plan method. And I am now feeling happy that these two folks are separately going to be able to make better choices for their house, to have the resources, the process, the mental space, the reassurance that they need to now get a good result. But so many other people out there hit option one or option two and feel like they've got to choose one of those two options. They either have to just let a contractor do whatever is on their mind in their vision board, or hire a designer at great expense and still not necessarily be able to articulate the mid-century nature and maybe even the personal desire of what's going on. One of the things we talk about in this call that you'll hear on the recording is that sometimes when you ask a designer for everything on your wish list, they'll respond by giving you a project that's a little out of scale and out of budget. And the master plan method is also designed to help you right size your goals so that you can get as much of your dream project as you can, but still for a process, for a price point that you can really afford. So I just feel like the timing of this is perfect to remind you that on Saturday, I will be hosting a live class where I walk you through every step of the mid-century master plan method, and also absolutely celebrate the kind of decision making that not only highlights what's glorious about your mid-century house, puts in mid-century charm that maybe was never there in the first place if it was particularly modest, and reassures you that you've come to the right place, that the people around you are all solving the same problems, struggling with the same challenges, and sharing the same love for mid-century that you have. So that's the experience I want to share with you by playing this recorded open architect office hours call for you today. And it's also the experience that I know you will have if you show up on Saturday. So are you already signed up for the live masterclass I'm hosting Saturday? This is going to be, what are dates? The 27th at 11 a.m. Central. If you're not free at that moment, by the way, you can absolutely still participate in this class. What you should do is sign up for it anyway, so that I can send you a link, not just an invite, but a replay link as soon as it's available. And if you sign up for the class and then reply to the confirmation email with the fact that you won't be there available live, and you have a question you would have asked me in the Q&A after the class, I will add it to my list, and you can watch your answer in the replay. If you're listening to this office hours call and you're just wishing you had been there, you had signed up for it, you heard about it in time, you were free on Monday, then I've got some fantastic news, because at the end of the live masterclass I'm giving Saturday, I'm going to stick around and answer every question that everyone has about what we covered in the class, about the master plan method, about the specifics of your home, the process of planning a regret-proof remodel. And if what you really want is a regular opportunity to come to the architect office hours calls that I host for my Ready to Remodel students every first Monday of the month, well, then I'm also going to be talking to you about Ready to Remodel at the end of that class. Yeah, I'm going to try to sell you on Ready to Remodel as a great solution, but come to the class for free information anyway, for a party celebrating mid-century joy, and for basically everything I understand and believe about the process of planning excellent, tailored, timeless mid-century remodels for homes, from modest to magnificent. Whether you are a brand new mid-century homeowner just unpacking boxes and getting yourself sorted out, or someone who's lived in your house for years, decades maybe, and are just now realizing that it no longer suits the way you want to live your life, or perhaps it never did, and now you're trying to break out of the rut and the solidity of your vision of what this house is. I'm going to have advice for how to start thinking by asking the right questions, and then where to go and how to go about finding the right answers for you and for your home. Please come to this class. It is one of my favorite live events to host. I do this no more than twice a year these days because it does take some time and energy to put it on, and I would love to share this energy and enthusiasm with you on Saturday. Okay, you can sign up for that class, by the way, if you haven't already, at midmod-midwest.com/masterclass. That'll take you to the sign up link. Or if you're listening to this episode in the future, you already missed the live event, it'll take you to an evergreen replay that you can watch on your own time, because Ready to Remodel does have a time-sensitive element. We're going to be kicking off an intensive session. People are going to join all at the same time. There's going to be energy around it. Some of our existing Ready to Remodel students will get fired up in this process, and we will create a mid-mod remod squad that's going to meet twice monthly through the end of the year for maximum planning effect and energy and support to just keep you moving towards your goals. But also, Ready to Remodel is an evergreen program that's always there because I know that sometimes when you need advice and you need energy to move forward on planning your home, that's the moment you need it. So if you're listening to this in the future, hi, how is the future? I hope it's simmered down a little bit. But one way or another, this is going to be a really good focus on what's positive in our lives moment on Saturday. You can find the transcript of this office hours call, this whole episode, at the show notes page, midmod-midwest.com/2208. And without further ado, I'm going to take you right into this really, really fun live event that was hosted on Monday. Marvelous. Everybody's here. I think everybody has a question. We'll see if anybody else shows up. I'll just get started though, because we have lots of questions and an hour to get through them. Welcome. This is Architect Office Hours call with me, Della Hansman of Mid-Ma Midwest. I generally hold these calls for a group of student homeowners who are planning their own remodels. But since we are just getting to know each other, I'm going to follow the general introductory format that I use on that with a twist because we are just getting to know each other. I always begin with a bit of business. I will just mention to everyone that's here, I think you'll find it interesting. I'm giving a workshop on Saturday, planning a mid-century remodel to fit your life and budget. That workshop is part encouragement, part the method to my madness, partly the secrets to getting a successful mid-century remodel underway. And I venture to say a good time guaranteed to all. We've been doing them I do them live about twice a year for the last, I'm going to say 5 years now, I think. And they're just a wonderful opportunity, much like this evening, to get a bunch of people in the same Zoom who really care about mid-century houses. Not unrelated to that, starting in October, I'm about to be hosting a mid-mod remod squad within my Ready to Remodel program. And that is the venue in which I typically host these Architect Office Hours calls. I hold them monthly to support the students inside that program so that they can come and ask me their questions. But that program is also guidance. It's on-demand lectures, lessons, examples, guides to take you through the steps of the master plan process. It is an evergreen program, so people can join it when they are ready. But every now and then, usually when I host a free live class, we have a group of people that all join at the same time. And then we kind of have that cohort go through the program together and feel a little bit more togetherness, because you're planning a remodel. If you're thinking about your house, you may spend a lot of time feeling kind of alone about it. And so it's really nice to just feel like there are other people who are sometimes struggling with the exact same challenges you are, or as we often find on calls like this within the students, someone who's already experienced a particular challenge and can provide their own personal insight as well as my advice, or seeing people who are a little further down the process. Both can be really wonderful and lovely experiences. So that's item of business number one. Item of business number two is the Mid-Mod Remodel podcast. I usually give a little forecast of what's coming up. Coming soon on the podcast is goal setting for a remodel. I think of this is a long-term prospect. Planning a remodel is not going to happen overnight. Having a remodel done is not going to happen overnight, but even the planning itself can be a very lengthy process. So finding the thread that's going to pull you through it is something I personally find a very interesting question. And so I'm going to be talking about that on an upcoming episode. It'll either be this Thursday or next. I haven't quite decided the order for the next two episodes, so we'll see. And then I'm going to do a really nerdy deep dive into the Sanborn fire insurance maps, which were created originally after the insurance business of America basically went out of business when all of New York caught on fire at the same time. This is like, I'm going to still have to do my research, but this is more than 100 years ago probably now. And so they had to start making some plans. This feels very relevant and prescient to where we are today, where we're having more and more challenges in the insurance industry. And it also affects the way our zoning laws work and the way our setbacks and building regulations work. So if you're here for the history nerdery, we'll be covering that then. Also, it's come to my attention, I've never explicitly done a podcast on siding for MCM houses. I have talked about it to individuals. I have specified it for countless clients, but I have never done a podcast on the topic. So stay tuned for that one. All right. Before we get into the questions, one more thing I like to do is a little pep talk, a homily, if you will, that's broader. And today, I think I'm just going to give you a preview of what will be discussed on Saturday, which is a quick overview of the master plan method. Today's questions are all about tactics. People are coming with a specific thing they want to know. I'm going to try to give you a specific answer, but I can't give a really specific answer responsibly, honestly, without circling back into some of the deeper understandings of what you're trying to get out of your remodel. And the master plan method for me is the process by which we always come back to the deeper underlying reasons that we would choose a particular answer. If you're not familiar with it, it is summarized in 5 Ds that you follow roughly in order. The first one, dream, gets to your why. What are you trying to get at? The feeling, the vibe, the experience, the life that you're trying to create with changes to your house. The second one, discover is about the house itself, structure, materials, history, remodeling background. Might have something to do with budget, certainly has to do with the zoning code. It's about the sort of the how and the what of what's going to happen. And then there's distill. This gets to the mid-century materiality of it, the combination of materials you're going to choose. For every individual person who likes mid-century, in air quotes, they mean something else. We all mean something a little bit different. We've got a different core memory of a grandparent's house or a TV show, a place we once were that seemed particularly cool. We mean a different level of trying to create a preserved museum versus trying to update something that feels well chosen and blended and not anachronistic. So finding where you are on the spectrum of sort of when and how much is a really important part of that process. With those three pre-design steps out of the way, we can consider options. And I file this under the D of draft. And this really is important to me, as you're going to see when I answer questions today. There's never one answer. There's always multiple options. So I always want to explore possibilities before I get to choosing something. And this really comes together with, based on all the three pre-design pieces we're juggling, what could we consider? And finally, develop. It's not an answer, it is a direction. And it's sort of spiraling always inwards towards the last thing you choose to do on your house, which is probably not going to be the last thing that ever happens to your house. But I think of develop as the phase where we set priorities, we focus budgets, we maybe do an order of an operations. It's always still a little bit open to a necessary pivot in the right moment. If things change, we can take all of the work we've done before and go forward. And that ultimately is what I want for everyone to get out of design. I think too often we look at a picture in a magazine or design is provided to us by an expert, and it can feel very rigid. There's only one answer. There's only one product. This is the only cure. That's unrealistic. And it is very brittle when it meets contact with reality. So my goal is always to have all of the backing of why you wanted to do what you wanted to do, why your house led you to make the choices you've made, how you were trying to create it happen, all the options you considered, and then finally where you're going from here. So I encourage you all to tune into the workshop I'm giving on Saturday. Catch the replay if you happen to miss it or if you're not free on the weekend, because I will be framing all these specific questions we answer today under that larger umbrella of master plan thinking for mid-century houses. Okay. That was kind of a fast pass through the business, but we've got a bunch of questions on the list here, and I'm just going to take them in the order that they came in. Just checking that everybody is here to have them. So the first one came in from Mary. Mary, are you here? Do you want to come off mute and I can interrogate you a little bit more about your house in a very friendly way?
Hi.
Hi there. Okay. So first I'll just reframe your question. And I will say, okay, so you've been in a 1962 tri-level for 25 years, and it's time to remodel the original kitchen. You're in Ann Arbor. Oh, I have done a couple of really fun projects in Ann Arbor. That's fun. So to gain space without the expense of a full-fledged addition, you're considering a cantilever solution, about 22 inches to the edge of the roof eave. And you ask, have others done this? Are they happy with it? Okay. Fabulous. Short answer, yes, that can work. And then long answer, I have questions and caveats. So I'm actually going to do exactly what I said I would. I'm going to come back to the why. What's going on in the original kitchen? Too tight of a layout? I'm not surprised if that's true. Tell me a little bit about the situation.
Yes, too tight and no workspace. There's no surface area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and that's super common. Mid-century kitchens are strangely light on work surfaces. They tend to have, a row of cabinets that are engaged to a wall and have upper cabinets in front of them. So I will say there's a couple of rules of thumb when you're thinking about a push-out, a cantilevered addition. The first one is to check it's going to work best if you're going in the direction of your floor joists. Do you know from being in the basement? Do the floor joists all point in the direction you want to push out? Okay, excellent. And then there's a light rule of thumb, which is it's good to have at least 3 times as much joists still inside the house continuously as your push out, which at a 22-inch, you should also be just fine on that. From a design perspective, rather than an engineering perspective, I have more questions. You'd mentioned pushing out to the edge of the roof eave. Is that exactly 22 inches?
Yes, and that would... It might actually go out 20 and give an inch or so at the edge yet of you know.
So that's it's still a fine idea. I have a couple of things I would want you to consider before you decided on it. The first one would be the loss of the roof hang from a functional perspective, because roof overhangs protect the siding from wear and tear and blowing winds, not from everything, but from a lot. And so you want to think about what else are you doing to protect the siding in this? You'll be, having new siding in a framed out new area. So will it be particularly water and weatherproof? How will that work? It will also, you'll lose a little bit of shading. If you've got windows in that wall, you probably will. Why would you not take the opportunity to add more windows? They won't have a shady overhang unless you add some other kind of shade structure, or unless you have seasonal natural shade in the form of deciduous trees, for example. You're also going to have an aesthetic loss with the loss of the roof overhang. There is a sort of a natural hat brim effect to having a roof overhang that we have learned to appreciate in buildings. It makes them feel a little bit more tied together. So when you lose that, it's not a disaster, but it can feel a little bit less graceful, especially if it's pretty broad. If you're just pushing out for, say, 8 to 10 feet of the width of a kitchen, you might choose, rather to try to blend that, you might choose to emphasize it. You might choose a contrasting siding color or pattern there, since it's going to be new, might have a lot of window in it. But you might also think about some sort of projecting trellis style shade structure that's going to, A, guard the window from the sun a little bit, but B, provide a visual anchor to that space. You might also think you're wise to think about a moderate cantilevered extension from your saving on foundation point of view. You might also think about, though, adding a little cross gable to your roof and projecting the roof out over it to solve those previous two problems. So you get the siding protection and you get the aesthetic sort of tied together nature. Obviously, price point is going to come into this. Is that worth it? It will not win you anything interior square footage wise, but it might give you a building performance edge, and it might also be important aesthetically. What direction towards the street does this kitchen potential push out face?
So this is facing the backyard.
Okay.
And it does face the west, so we get this really bright late afternoon, early evening light. But we think we're going to do a slice of a clerestory window above that will be stained glass.
Oh, beautiful.
And that would maybe cut down on some of that super bright sunlight.
It'll cut down on it a bit. Yeah, with western facing light, sometimes the only solution is shades, because, particularly at the end of the year, it's going to come in almost horizontally. So no amount of overhang is really going to guard against that. That answers a couple of my questions. One other thing to think about is, for the simplicity of construction, you probably want to keep plumbing out of that cantilevered space, because it's going to be a little bit of an insulation hassle and you'll have to run the lines in through the thing. So if there's any way to have that just be work surface and not, for example, anchor a sink in it, that might make your life slightly simpler. But of course, the layout solution will be driven by more considerations than just that. What else is on your mind about this that I can answer before I have to move on to the next question?
No, those are great considerations. And I think just imagining not having an overhang out there is important to kind of anticipate, and how are we going to feel about that? So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a little bit of a loss, but it might well be worth the trade-off. And there are other, like I say, you might even think about a shade trellis. I call it a shade trellis, but really more of an aesthetic thing, just to bring back the hat brim of the roof overhang. Something to think about.
Right. Thank you. That's great.
Excellent. Well, thanks for asking. It's a really good question. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Erica, a raised ranch from 1970 with sort of a mid-century colonial or mid-century traditional vibe that had been a time capsule up to 2012, and then something happened. So you're looking to pull it back into a more timeless state with a sort of a mid-mod fusion and 1960s, 70s vibe. I'm not going to read the whole list, but I'm sorry, am I mispronouncing your name? Is it Erikia? Oh, is she not here? No, you're here. Can you unmute and
Okay.
Hi there. Okay, great.
Hi.
Lovely to meet you.
Erica.
Erica. Okay. Marvelous. Okay, so you have a bunch of good items on your to-do list that I can't fully go through, but basically your main problem is that the cabinets, which were once lovely original, probably pine, have been painted. And so now you're looking for solutions to work with that. You're also going to be replacing light fixtures and bringing wood elements in as many places as you can, replace the cabinet hinges, replace the countertop with new Formica. I love all of those things. Excellent. So you'd ask specifically about, should you repaint the cabinets in a new non-HGTV white color, maybe green? And you're worried a little bit because there's a trendy moment for green cabinets going on right now. You're right. I would say two things to that. First off, it could certainly work. And I think even though there's a bit of a trend moment happening for green, if you pick your green right, it won't look trendy because it'll be maybe tip more towards the 70s avocado, and it won't feel as on trend, and therefore will never feel as off once the sort of merry-go-round goes back down. No, that's not what it is. It goes around in a circle.
Ferris wheel.
A Ferris wheel. Thank you. Right. I would suggest, though, have you tried stripping the paint? Have you done any little test passes?
I haven't. The countertops or the cabinets were painted professionally, and so the finish is mostly intact and very on there.
Okay. Well, that is a bit of a dent. I might take like the inner side or somewhere kind of out of way. I might try stripping it because a good strip, the kind of stripper where you like put a plastic film over it and leave it for a while and take it off. People have had amazing results with that. And then you could restain and get back to your original wood grain, which would be the win. It's labor intensive. It is chemically nasty. It's stinky. So it's a process not everyone is going to be up for. You could also compromise. I noticed from the photos you shared, which I'm going to not share photos in this call because we got to keep moving. But I noticed from the photos that you shared that it's kind of, there's some uppers and some lowers. You could choose, for example, to just like only strip the upper cabinets and then paint the lower cabinets green, for example, and focus your attention on just a limited area, or even just highlight one specific space. I also noticed there's a slab panel door in your kitchen, and that might be another thing that you could try stripping to get back to, just bring the original wood grain back into play a little bit. That said, I think your instinct to paint the walls, the ceiling, and the existing painted trim all the same color white, it's the best compromise when you've lost original finishes. So you're going in the right direction. The other question you'd asked was, it's a little dark in there and your only one window faces north. So for that, I would suggest sticking to the lighter end of the green. Although a good reflective surface on the cabinets it's not gonna darken the space that much. I would also suggest you absolutely look to add under cabinet lighting, and you don't even need to hardwire that in these days. You can get from any big box store good quality LED lights that you might have to operate with a remote, or you can sometimes have them wired to or remoted to a switch that's wired in the wall and looks like a regular switch, and that's going to make a world of difference. It also might be worth thinking about cutting in a light tube. Light from the sky, if you don't have a floor above, is tremendously valuable in a kitchen in the daytime. The other thing I would just volunteer, and being the only person who've seen these photos, I'm just talking out of my hat a little bit here, but there was clearly once a wooden valance over the sink that guarded probably a fluorescent tube light, which would have been awful. But I might think about bringing back that wooden valance and putting an LED light behind it instead of the smaller light that's currently over the sink, which is probably a recessed CFL or something like that. And I would then extend that wooden valance beyond the edge of the sink to whatever there used to be built-ins or something on the left-hand side of the sink. And if you could tie that in, that might also be a place, if you choose to not do any stripping on the original now painted cabinets, to bring in one new wood grain piece of cabinetry that's over there and have it sort of tie across at the valance edge. So that could be another place to bring wood grain into the kitchen. For anyone else who's suffering from, you once had beautiful wood grain and it has been painted, restoring what you had is always worth a shot. But Erica, you were absolutely on the right track with just bringing other wooden elements into the space. And sometimes that is good enough. Do you have other color questions that you're still pondering?
I don't think so. It's probably going to be just a little bit before we get to the paint. So we've also thought about like a harvest gold or maybe some kind of orange. We like a lot of color, but I also don't want to get something that's like too crazy because we have a lot of bright artwork and colorful furnishings and things like that in the house. So I kind of like the walls and everything to be sort of neutral for that. And I'm really struggling because we just moved into this house. Our last house, we were able to do a beautiful remodel with maple flat slab cabinets and beautiful formica. Really, it just turned out so well. And people, when they would come over, were like, is this new or is this original?
That's the
And
question you want, right?
yeah, that's kind of what I would like to have again, but we just don't have the budget or the effort or the time right now to put into this. But it's so bad, as you can see from the photos, that we can't handle it. Like, I need to do something with this kitchen.
Well, far be it from me, but I do kind of think of yellow as a neutral. I think sometimes once something is painted, it's a little bit like hearts has been broken in the card game. Like, now you can go ahead and do something. So I feel like you could just go ahead and say these cabinets have seen some things, and now you're going to make them a feature, not a bug, and really get away from the HGTV white, which is just going to be your most. It's bland. It doesn't show them off to good effect, and I think that the green and a harvest gold both have going for them that they're warmer, which is what you lose when you lose the wood grain in a kitchen or in any built-in scenario. Is part of it is the texture and the patina and the interest to your eye of the actual grain, but part of it is just the warmth of that amber shellac color that they were obsessed with in the mid-century era. So yeah, if you're looking for a permission slip to paint your kitchen cabinets yellow, I say do it and then send me pictures.
Okay. That sounds good.
All right, marvelous. Okay, I want to spend more time on each and every one of these, but I've got too many of you, so I'm just going to keep flying along. My next question is from Leah. Okay, and you said you've got a built-in 1956, looks traditional with a gable roof, mid-century house. An addition on the back from 1972 looks mid-century modern with a flat roof. You're doing an exterior renovation, keeping it Usonian red. Ooh, I love it. But for the time to be restained and repairs for woodpecker holes. Okay, great. So, all right, you had mentioned, you've got a longer story I'm going to summarize, but basically it sounds like you've been thinking about this for a while. You've been looking for kind of good advice, and you have worked with a local architect who's proposed a lovely but really intense set of brand new kitchen built-ins all over the place. And now your specific question was, do I know of affordable mid-century cabinet manufacturers or custom cabinet makers in the greater Chicagoland area who make circular recessed integrated pulls and affordable formaldehyde-free options? Okay, so the first thing I want to say is I'm sorry you've been finding this process so stressful. And I can totally sympathize because, yeah, taking on what had been a time capsule house and planning big changes for it can be overwhelming. To speak to the millwork question specifically, you had mentioned in your longer question that you'd also run this past several contractors who were saying it was probably just going to go over your stated budget. You shared the plans that the other architect had designed. Do you want to chip in on this?
Yeah, only one GC has seen it so far. So what happens when we first bought the house, we started with GCs. I was reading one of your articles about how a typical a typical middle class remodel goes, which is you're starting with the GC, and I felt like nobody understood me. Every GC that I had, like 2 or 3 come right after we bought the house last fall. Mm-hmm. They wanted to give me Craftsman this and big old trim and all these and vinyl siding and vinyl new windows, and I was like, oh no, I got so overwhelmed. Like, nobody understands me, and they're asking for all these expensive changes that I think will everything up. Yeah. And so then we got overwhelmed, mulled on it. We're in the tornado of being on Pinterest and me and my husband trying to figure out. And then finally, a few months ago, we hired a local architect and said, we want to kind of revive this mid-century house, but we need it to open up because I have a big local family. So it's a small house, but there are regularly 10 people over at my house. My sister lives across the street. We needed that kitchen to get bigger.
Right.
And so the architect proposed a few different things, and we really like the design now. But when we met with the first GC to see the design, which was Friday, he was like, with your budget, I don't think you're going to be able to afford all this millwork. And I started to try to understand what are the cost drivers of millwork? Is it the localness of it, the type of wood, how much of it there is? How can I see if he's just saying this one line, which is a higher end line that he carries called Crystal Cabinets? Is it just that I need a lower end line, but trying to figure out how to approach trying to make this new millwork affordable?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So you're right. Oh my gosh, I literally was having a call with a potential master plan client today who told me the same story. And it's the story I hear constantly of what we think when we want to remodel is you pick up the yellow pages metaphorically, you get the internet and you call all the contractors in the area. But that does lead to your HGTV remodel. So the thing about millwork is it's always going to be expensive. There's a couple of ways to modify the cost of millwork. The first one probably is just to pull back on it. Think about prioritizing certain areas where you need it and other areas where you can get away with more simple storage. There are other ways to think about sourcing. I would say you definitely want to source from different millwork cabinet shops in your area. So it may be that each contractor you talk to has a specific relationship. In some cases, they may have a one-to-one, a fully negotiated deal that they only work with one person. In others, they may be willing to bid a couple of options, and that's worth looking into. There can be dramatic, like tens of thousands of dollars of price difference between a full house of millwork from one place or another. You might source custom millwork that comes from a little bit further away. Like, for example, you'd asked about Chicagoland, but I would turn my attention away. I would turn your back on Chicago and look to Indiana for just lower overhead costs. We're not looking for anyone who's abusing their employees, of course, but just places that are able to have a lower cost of doing business. To pick out Indiana specifically, there's a lot of, you might think about going sort of outside of, you wouldn't put mid-century into your search term necessarily when you're looking for cabinets in Indiana, because there are a lot of shops out there, or not even shops, who are doing really beautiful, like Amish or Mennonite craftsmen work, who are doing Victorians and craftsman houses and much more detailed things that can turn their attention to slab cabinets and produce truly stunning work, and will, if given a couple of visual references of what you're looking for. The other thing you can do is go in the complete opposite direction and look for something that's a bit more flat pack. If you're willing to consider it, doing IKEA cabinet boxes with semi-custom fronts and door and drawers can be a reasonable solution. I actually Googled before answering this, and IKEA does not promise to be completely formaldehyde free. They just say they don't use it in their processes, but they feel like it's not preventable. I don't know how much I want to take that with a grain of salt, but that can be really effective. There is a particular company, since you mentioned recessed, drilled out cabinet pulls, there's a company called Plykea, Plykea, that started in the UK but now has American suppliers, and they do plywood-based door and door fronts, and they do that kind of gorgeous recessed pull. So there's some different avenues to Google around there, but I think probably it's going to be a combination of both, turning down the cost level on per unit of your built-ins, and also maybe phasing or compromising a little bit on scale. This is always a great moment. You've been working with a designer. It looks like they've done some lovely things. But if I can critique my own profession, I think we tend to take a wish list from a client and try to answer all of it. And, out of a desire to please, but it can easily go over budget when we do it that way. And so this might be a chance for you to kind of take a master plan approach and recheck your overall priorities. Think about sort of what are the most important pieces to you, and can you phase or step back or sort of put more energy in one part of the house and less in another part of the house to get it to compromise with your budget.
That totally makes sense. This is very helpful. I'm going to look into like Plykea and, like you said, even like maybe Amish in Indiana, cabinet makers. One question that came to my mind when you thought about Amish, because why I tend to gear towards Chicago since we're so close, is because when I do search online, the prevalent styles in Indiana tend to be this more traditional. And so there's never any example on a website of something I like. Every time I open a website, I'm like, no.
That's not it. Right. But I will say, I will pick this up very specifically. I had a wonderful experience on behalf of a client of mine in central Indiana, who they had already started a contract with a design build firm that they loved the relationship with, but they just could not get them to understand mid-century until we came in and did a master plan for them, at which point we showed them the visuals that they were looking for, and they produced the most beautiful mid-century modern built-ins that I've seen in any project of my own. That's just great. Absolutely glorious. Like the grain match was divine. So they just, and they actually really got into it. The team that was working on it had a lot of fun doing the work. They just didn't really know what it was beforehand. They hadn't encountered it. They're not reading Atomic Ranch magazine. So they just need some examples. And so I wouldn't necessarily say only because the examples in someone's photo book are only traditional in the past. It means they can't do something modern for you.
And you think that something simple like a circle pole isn't something that a mill worker would be like, oh, that's too complicated to do. That's a pretty simple thing.
I mean,
on a side cabinet.
The thing about modernism is it actually is pretty hard to do right, but the level of craft that you need to do craftsman or Victorian right is the same level. So yeah, take them pictures and say, can you do this? Would you do this? Would you find this fun? And that I think is a conversation that's worth having to make all of the changes that you want to have and happen for your budget.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. Marvelous. Okay. Oh, you'd asked another quick question. Oh, very quick. The painted wallpaper. You'd asked if there's painted wallpaper in the house, and you had, I'm just going to reinforce what your general contractor said, which is I would not recommend drywalling over that. That's going to create layered issues. In a worst case scenario, it might be take off the drywall or plaster and replace it with new, but you can still strip drywall that's been painted over. It's just a little bit harder. So that might be worth.
You can still strip wallpaper that's been painted?
Yeah.
Okay.
You might need to find, if you're going to DIY it, you have to score the paint so that the stripping chemicals can get underneath it. Again, this is going to be stinky, and I'm apologizing in advance for any of that. Vent properly, but better living through chemistry if we can manage it. Okay, that is, all right, that's only 3 questions. Okay, I'm going to keep going. We've got Alexis, a ranch house built in 1958 with cedar siding, somewhat symmetrical U-shape. If you look at it from the air, wouldn't call it modern, though. There are no real modern elements around it. It's light on trim, has pseudo-clerestory windows in the living and bedrooms. Okay, I am going to need to show a picture here because your question is that you're stumped by what to do with the fireplace in the formal living room. Scoured the internet, and I can't find anything like this. I'm not sure if they did some kind of renovation to it over the years, but I'm struggling to how to give it more presence in the room. And I am going to find your question and screen share this. Ooh, am I? Yeah, I am. It's just going to take me a minute. There we go. All right. Are you available to answer further follow-up questions, Alexis? If not, I'm just going to look at this picture and guess at you what you might ask. But if you want to come off mute, if you're here.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So this is your fireplace. You're right. I have not seen anything much like this. And what I would tell you is that I think that this looks original to a mid-century traditional house, but okay. I don't know. This being the brickwork, which is in a nice little stack bond and goes around. Mm-hmm. It's a double fireplace, or I guess it's a fireplace with a little wood storage area, right? I suspect that this black marble-ish sort of hearth extension that's in front of it, and then possibly also this little bit of tile nosing that goes around it may have been added at a later date.
Okay. Yeah, there's like a slate. I don't know if you could see in the picture, but there's slate under the hearth extension. So it's like they put that like polished stone like directly on top of the slate.
I wonder if it cracked or if they just decided this reads very like 2004 to me. But
yeah, and yeah, so I just am like at a loss as to what to do. And I think I realized it's because everything I look at, like the firebox like is completely flush with the wall. And so I don't, usually when you see this, it's like the chimney like sticks out and there's some recesses on either side or something to kind of like put, furniture I could place, but like I don't know if it was like this originally and what did people do originally to kind of like decorate around it, I guess, or or would it have ever had a mantle, that projected from the wall? I don't know.
It certainly might have, although I think in this case it looks like, I think you're right. I think this slate piece underneath is probably original, and it was just a relatively minimalist item because it's also got these you've got hot water heating pipes panel running along right up to it. So I guess, but here's my question. Is it a functional fireplace? Is it your goal to help it perform better as a fireplace, or are you just looking for more of a visual anchor in the room?
Visual, I mean, it is functional, it works. It really just more visual. We don't, it's a fairly large room, and we have like a, TV room, a family room, I guess. So it's not that I need storage. It's not that I need, there could be a projection from the wall that takes up space. I just didn't, and I don't want to do something that's like making it something it's not, but also just it's a little boring, I guess.
Yeah. It does feel a little unanchored in the space. I agree. And I think probably my instinct would be if it was my fireplace, I might try to take back off this little decorative bullnose border, unless it pleases you, in which case absolutely leave it. But I think part of what's going on with this is I can see that you've got a big symmetrical centered piece of art over it, and the first thing I would do is unbalance this. I would shift that to one side and put something else underneath it and try to get more of a diagonal visual effect happening across the room. If you were to, for example, put something like a mantle over this, mid-century fireplaces often don't come with mantles. They don't necessarily need them. But if you're looking for that, I would again say your instinct with that is to sort of start it on one side and let it dramatically overhang on the other side.
Got it.
This isn't ever going to respond well to symmetry or to sort of kind of give it a formal order in the room. It needs to be a little bit more activated. You could also do this just with paint, for example. So if you want, let's go back to this image that's got the more of the whole thing. You could create kind of an accent panel in a finish, could be in a tile, could be in a faux brick. If you could find a glazed brick that kind of picked up some of the vibes of this, you could have it come all the way up to the ceiling or just in a bigger piece. And again, I would just unbalance this square. And I think that's instantly going to make the room feel more active. And then the other pieces in the room can respond to it. Whereas right now it kind of feels like everything wants to sit around it and pay homage to the fireplace. But the rest of the room doesn't quite do that, with windows on one side and doors over here. So break out of the prison of symmetry, and I think you'll feel like you've got a lot more options.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, marvelous. Well, relatively straightforward, a simple and then wide-ranging answer for a complicated little puzzle here. I'm going to break out of my screen share. Thanks for that one. And we'll pop on to the next question, which is from Lynn. We've got a side-split MCM house in Ontario, Canada, built in the late 60s, early 70s, finished in 72 by the original owners. The lower level is a walkout built on a concrete slab that extends to an exterior patio. This house was built at a time when there was no building code and there is no vapor barrier under the concrete slab pour. So here's the question. We are removing 2 layers of wall-to-wall carpet. This is where I got stuck. This is wall-to-wall carpet on top of other wall-to-wall carpet. Lynn, are you here? Can you verify this? Oh, she might not be. Lynn, you'll have to get this. I'm going to email you about this because, oh my God. Okay. So, all right. 2 layers of wall-to-wall carpet. The mind boggles. But here's the real question. You're looking to make the space feel a little warmer. Canadian winters, that is totally reasonable. And you want to add, one of the ways you're thinking to do this is by adding a layer of insulation between the slab and the new flooring surface in such a way that the flooring won't fail. The lower level does not have a moisture issue right now. In-floor heating would be cost prohibitive. Bummer. That was one of the things I was going to suggest, but you got to do what you can. So you basically are getting contradictory advice from different flooring companies who are all kind of recommending their own thing. I'm going to summarize. Basically, one group of people is saying, don't insulate, put a laminate or a vinyl click plank or glue down sheet vinyl or wall-to-wall carpet, and then just put area rugs on it for a warmer feel underfoot. You don't like that advice because you know for a fact that's not warm. The other group is saying, use an insulated product such as Drycore. I will get back to that in a moment, and then put a floating floor of cork, vinyl, or laminate on top of that, leaving edges open around the rooms for a little bit of expansion and contraction and any kind of humidity. But they warn that if you put heavy furniture on top of that, it might pin the float floor so much that it could still buckle in a humidity change. So first, I'm going to speak to the broader issue of this. We often find as homeowners that when we go to subcontractor specialists, particularly people who specialize in one particular type of a product, like they're flooring guys, but they only install laminate click lock or vinyl LVP, what have you, they're going to recommend their own product because they want to make a sale, and also probably because they like their product because that's what they do all the time. I encountered this phenomenon first when I got my start in architecture working in sustainability design, and it would drive me absolutely to the wall as an architect who was just trying to get everyone to build more environmentally friendly houses. And I'd go to an energy fair, and each and every single one of the sales reps for the different types of solar panels, solar thermal panels, geothermal, what have you, would all be telling everyone who came to their stand that they had the only viable product and everything else was going to be built at a loss, and it was a terrible idea, and you really just needed geothermal for every single house in America. And I can tell you for a fact that geothermal only really works well if you've got a really big field and you're doing a really big area. It's great for taking down the cost of a corporate office. It's not a very good solution for residential. Other things are, and it's good for other things. Anyway, this phenomenon of everybody wants to sell their product to every single person who comes to their door really irritates me. And it makes the world very confusing and murky for us as homeowners who are just trying to get good information and compare apples to apples. So, for loss of better advice, I would say come talk to an architect because we don't have a dog in this hunt. But you can also go talk to just anybody that you're paying for their advice and not their product. I would talk to a local building inspector anytime you're having a quandary like this and you don't have me on hand. In this particular case, I am just going to allow my own biases to kick in and say, I don't think putting wall-to-wall carpet over an unvapor barriered slab sounds like a good idea. And I really don't like roll-out laminate. I personally have put dry core insulation in my basement. Dry core, for anyone who's not familiar, is a specific product. Comes in panels that are almost 2 foot by 2 foot, and you click them together. They have an OSB engineered flooring on top and a raised plastic hard bottom. That means that moisture can always move around underneath a little bit if you need it to, which is great for not trapping moisture underneath a sealed surface. So I probably would, as a friend, recommend you the same solution I chose for my own basement, which is a dry core subfloor and cork for maximum insulation and foot friendliness on top, and then an area rug on top of that. I would also argue that if you pin your flooring down with heavy furniture on top of an area rug, there's still actually a little bit of room for slippage, which could solve the problem that you were being given by Camp 2 of your flooring installers. I think in this case, for a Canadian uninsulated slab house, I'm going to recommend you add all the insulation you can. And I particularly like dry core or a similar product that's not just an insulation barrier on top of the floor, but has that little air gap, which is going to do a lot, not just for buckling, humidity expansion and contraction, but also to allow any moisture that may ever gather in, for example, when will you encounter that most? You'll probably get moisture accumulating on the floor in the summer, when the slab itself is cool because of the ground temperature, and you might have warm, moist air flowing through the house if you aren't running an air conditioner, you might get humidity condensation on that floor surface underneath your finished floor, and that's when you really want an air barrier so it can move its way back out again. If you haven't already listened to it, I just did a very nerdy, rambly podcast on the topic of thermal and moisture control in mid-century houses that I think you'll find useful. But yeah, generally speaking, I'm going to lean you towards, yes, go ahead and do an insulation and an air barrier or an air movement surface underneath your flooring. And then I will put in a bid for cork because I think it's fabulous and it's also less toxic than vinyl. But you could go ahead and do any kind of interlocking engineered floor at that point. And since I don't think you're here, you don't have any follow-up questions. So I'm going to leave you with that. Okay, so then we've got Michelle. How are we doing on our list? Hi, Michelle. Okay, great. We're doing excellent. We are kicking butt on this list. Michelle, you have a 1928 hunting cabin, approximately 600 square feet, added onto in 1955 with a mudroom that's sort of a kitchen, bedroom, bathroom. Added again in 1970, another bathroom, and a tower office lookout. Cool. So it's a mishmash of different eras. The exterior says cabin. The interior has knotty pine siding and ceilings and a mid-mod nod So your question is what to do in a situation with this sort of historical palimpsest of styles. You say you really learned to appreciate the mid-century. You're a podcast listener, hooray. And you're looking for inspiration to address both of the areas and a feeling of consistency. So are we looking in your Zoom background at this very cabinet question right now? Yeah. Well, I would say how much of 1927 is still there? Or do you feel like it's been pretty thoroughly overlaid by the 50s?
I think the whole outside looks like a 1920s cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And the windows, like the windows from the original rectangle are like those cabiny windows,
Oh, okay.
you know, but
Yeah.
it's still kind of got some mid-mod just because it's like whoever did the
Yeah.
ceiling and the walls, it's got some potential. It's like not symmetrical anywhere. Like there's not even a door that's symmetrical.
There's a lot going on there. I think this really
Yeah.
tips into the sort of can-do DIY early 50s mid-century vibes. So if you're looking for aesthetic precedents to follow, I would go hunting for, you know, the very early advertising literature, Better Homes and Gardens, sort of 1948 up to 1950, 60, like 56, 57. There's also, you'll find a bunch of, it's more sketches than illustrations, but popular mechanics from that era as well. By the way, for everybody here, if you're not already aware, there's an amazing resource through I'm typing it in right now to check, usmodernist.org. Yes, they have a collection, a digitally archived collection of vintage architecture magazines that you can scroll through and take screen grabs from. It's a wonderful resource looking for inspiration like this. So I would say when you're starting to accumulate your style guides, Michelle, you're looking for pieces that, I mean, you probably don't need to add wood, but you want everything you do to play nicely with the wood that you have. You want to think about what is the language of metal that's already happening in the house and probably stay within that at this point rather than trying to change everything. You might find that there are some inconsistent pieces that you want to switch out. But as you make new choices, I would always be tying them back to the sort of one of two things, either the majority rules material that's happening in the house or your personal preference out of anything that exists there already, which you can then lean on hard enough to weigh the votes and make it the majority. But I think the most important thing you want to do is think about setting up your style guide. So you're inside of Ready to Remodel already. I would go and take the workshop on More Than a Mood Board, which anybody can actually grab for yourself. It's like, I think it's $19 outside the program, but it's easily available to you inside the program. And follow that through. You can technically do it in 2 hours, but probably if you really deep dive into it, it'll take you longer than that. And start to just build out that collection of materials, wood, grain, and stain, metal, a couple of color materials that you're going to come back to again and again. You did also ask about how to work with people who are not necessarily the mid-century world. And I will actually give the same advice I've given already a couple of times on the call, and that's just to have a collection of visual examples that you're sharing with people at a first meeting or maybe even emailing them. A word of guidance on that, however, I will say, when you're reaching out to contractors, when you're communicating with anyone, it's important to understand kind of what their information acquisition level is and their preference for communication detail. So if you're working with me, for example, you cannot give me too much information about your house. I always want to know more. I want more pictures. I want more photos. I want more examples. But a lot of people can get overwhelmed by too much information. And as a general rule, without stereotyping, I will say that the type of human being who becomes a general contractor tends to be kind of a practical, focus on the thing that's in front of them type of person who doesn't want a lot of more information than they need right now. So this is where it's really important for us as master planners to curate and to have a couple of key things that we're going to share. Probably best done face-to-face so that you can kind of read the mood and see how much response you're getting from the person that you're talking to. If they're like, oh yeah, more, or I don't quite get it, can I see another one? Then you've got more examples to show them. But if they're like, yeah, got it, then you can move on to the next thing. So I think setting up a visual style guide is going to be your step number one for moving on from here. And I don't think you're going in the wrong direction. I think this vibe you've got going on here absolutely plays nicely with the kind of finish it yourself basement project that was happening all over America. Anything with Pickwick pine paneling in, that picture will have other elements in it that you can use in this house very well. I see that you did actually ask another question, but I've got another person's question I want to cycle through before I get to that, and then we'll see if we've got time to come back to that in the last few minutes of the call. So, last submitted question came from Ken, and actually it is 7 questions. So we're going to have to pick one or two of them. But Ken, are you here on the call right now? Maybe, maybe not. All right, I'm going to read the backstory right now. We've got a house built in 1969, a prairie-style Midwest mid-century ranch on an 1.5 acres up to the Milwaukee River. This house has been thoroughly expanded, renovated, modernized over the years. The facade is totally covered in a Wisconsin land and stone veneer, laid in a random ashlar pattern. Okay, so we've got 7 questions. I'm going to start from the top. The roof is going to need replacing in 3 to 4 years. Would I recommend the roof be replaced with 3-tab or dimensional asphalt shingles? That's an easy answer. I would recommend dimensional asphalt shingles. I think they're more interesting than 3-tab. I would also recommend a metal roof, but I know that there are price points there. So if you're looking for asphalt, I think that the quote unquote architectural style shingles cost slightly more, but last better. All shingles never really last as long as they're warranted for, but they last slightly better. They look more interesting. I think they're a better product. Then you'd ask that the secondary bedrooms have the original single pane double hung windows with exterior storms that are functional and in good condition. Should you replace them with new energy efficient double hung windows? I would say no. If you've got original windows that are still performing, they aren't broken, they aren't air leaking, they aren't whistling, I don't think here's what, it depends on your goal. If your goal is perfect human comfort, you might get a slightly better result with a newer window. They're often slightly better on air seal. They require, you don't have to go put storms on them and off them twice a year, so they're slightly easier. But if we're thinking about the energy efficiency balance, like in the universe, the cost of the materials and the labor and the transport that go into making brand new windows and throwing old windows into the trash, I don't think that comes out in the wash for quite a long time. And unfortunately, these days, it doesn't necessarily come out in the wash before you're replacing new windows, especially if you're feeling a price pinch on this, if you're thinking about replacing an existing functional wooden window with a storm with a new vinyl window. I think that's an environmental loss. And performance-wise, yeah, some modern replacement windows have a lifespan of like 20 years. So I don't recommend it. If you're looking for more warmth, I would say adding insulation on the inside with insulated curtains is a great way to start. Also, I just think storm windows are cool. So if you've got your original storms around and you don't mind putting out and taking them down, stick with that. That's a choice I would have made for my own home, but the previous homeowner trashed the original windows and put in vinyl replacement. Not my favorite. But I'm not going to re-replace them because that's just more landfill. Next question. A large band of double hung picture windows in the living room fog up, indicating a seal failure obscuring the view of the backyard. Should these be replaced with new windows? Okay, this is a great question because this is where the math starts to tip. If you've got blown seals on the interior of glass, you might be getting into a situation where you want to replace because that's a daily experience issue. However, if those are the original big picture windows in the backyard, before I would replace them, before I would call, this is a phone book issue, before you call the window replacement company in the phone book, call a local glazier and see if you can repair those windows. No window replacement company will ever talk to you about window repair, but it is possible. Not in every situation, but at least in some situations. And the only person you're going to hear about that from is a glazier. So call a glass company, not a window company, if you are specifically worried about the blown air seal on specific windows in your house. Fourth question. You replaced the flooring in the main living areas, kitchen, dining, living, with 6-inch wide plank engineered oak hardwood and travertine tiles in the family room. But there's old carpeting in the bedrooms. Should that be replaced? with something other than carpet? Should the flooring be identical in all rooms? Do you know what's underneath the carpet? Oh, wait, when was your house built? 69. Okay, never mind. There's OSB under there. I was going to say there might be hardwood under bedroom carpeting because that is a crazy thing people used to do back in the 1950s, is they would put in, well, in history nerd divergence, in 1954, the major U.S. companies who had been using nylon for war munitions figured out that they could use nylon to make wall-to-wall carpeting, and they were like, hey, America, you are not living a full life unless you have nylon wall-to-wall carpeting in your house. And America said, you're right, we're not. Give it to us. And they put it over the 2.5-inch strip flooring, which was beautiful, which was everywhere, which was the builder basic default in American housing before that. And in some cases, for those of us who have our houses built before 1954, we have original, in excellent condition, protected from the decades wood floor underneath nylon wall-to-wall carpeting that somebody's grandparent thought was really cool. That's fun when that happens, but that's not your situation. So I would say it does not need to be consistent. If you like carpet in the bedroom, if it's comfortable, I mean, a lot of people like to wake up and put their bare feet down on carpet. That's fine. I don't think you need to necessarily, if your choice is 6-inch wide engineered plank white oak hardwood, I think you could easily go with carpet. The only thing I would say needs to be wood in the bedroom is if you're going to do like an actual hardwood, but I think you can go ahead and do a wall-to-wall carpet in there if you want to. That said, if you want to do a solid surface floor, or if you want to do an engineered floor, I love cork. Cork is also very foot friendly, and you can put area rugs on it if you want the carpet feeling in your bedroom. This is the office hours episode where I talk about cork flooring and how much I love it. Natural antimicrobial. I have it in my bathroom. It's been around in some mid-century houses since the mid-century. It holds up really well. The only people I have heard have qualms about it are folks who have installed relatively new cork from possibly suspect companies and have dogs with large scratchy fingernails, or toenails rather. They've found that it doesn't always hold up with the surface the way they want it to. For that, I would say make sure you go with the natural colored cork rather than the kind of cork that's been painted millennial gray. Do we have time for all of these? I'm going to answer your last question, and then we'll call it good. The 7th question was, what is the definition of open concept in a mid-century context? It seems real estate agents' listings and residential home builders use the term very loosely. That is so true. So the thing about mid-century is open concept wasn't really a term that was applied to it at the time. It's something that sort of it's an HGTV term that gets reapplied to mid-century because mid-century was not necessarily about being open. It was about being more open than houses that had all of their structure happening internally, hidden inside the walls. And also houses that were designed to be containers of space that were separating different levels of formality, different levels of gender, different levels of service versus served space in a house. And in the mid-century, we start to have the preponderance of houses being built are more modest in scope. They're not meant to have in-house staff during the day or at night. And they're meant to be kind of visually assessed and kept an eye on by one, we're going to say housewife, during the course of the day. So they needed a bit more through lines. And also, the modernist architects who were sort of pushing big design coming down from the top that was percolating into the sort of builder boom of that era were talking more about post and beam structures. They were talking about connecting inside to outside spaces and also interior spaces to each other. So we tend to have mid-century houses that have relatively private defined bedroom and bathroom areas, but a lot more connection between a living room and a dining room being basically in the same space, maybe with slightly different proportions, and then a connection to the kitchen that's more open. Maybe it's an open doorway, maybe it's fully open. That's a bit more of a gray area depending on the era. So open concept basically just means we blew out a lot of interior walls in the remodel, or it's often used to describe the kind of condo which is built in a high-rise building that has major structure at the outer corners and a few inner column lines. So there's just nothing that really has to break it up, and nobody did. What I think if you're asking about it in sort of a should way, I think you can absolutely embrace mid-century design materials, finishes, fixtures, and not enjoy having your kitchen sink on display to the front door. The level of openness that you want to have between the spaces in your house is personal. And this is why I'll circle this all the way back around to the mid-century master plan method and ask, what is the end goal? Not what rooms do you want to do in your house, but what feeling do you want to create in your house? Is it a place where introverts can all kind of get away from each other and like down cycle at the end of the evening? Or is it a place where everyone is tossed into a mixing bowl of a social area so they can talk about their days and reconnect with each other and fire each other up? Are you having big extended family groupings, or is it a place for just one person to recharge? These kind of questions, or maybe two people to recharge together but separately, these are the kind of questions which are more important than sort of knowing that something is open concept or not. That leads us perfectly, even though we're slightly over time, to Michelle's follow-up question, which is about weight-bearing walls that go away. So I want to answer that one too. Because this is just sort of a point you in the right direction question. You'd asked, who do I consult about weight-bearing walls that could go away? A structural engineer? Is steel better for long span with no posts? I imagine I'll have to leave some posts. What are cool ways to integrate those posts? So I want to answer that question in several ways. Yes, if you're knocking out major lines of structure, even I would recommend getting an engineer on hand. Calculating the way that roof loads are going to come down, particularly in a house that has been added onto multiple times, is a job for an engineer. They're good at it, they like it, and they will do it for a simple flat fee. But I would also caution that it's more complex than a simple matter of bearing and load, because we don't just want to find like what's the maximum open span we get, which is the math that an engineer will do. We also want to think about what spaces are we dividing, connecting. And so this is a place where my instinct is often not to create the widest opening that I can, but to create some sense of openness, and then sometimes to not disguise a column, but give a column more meaning by giving it some friends. So I might say, you can't just scoot, if you have a space that's currently being supported by 4 evenly spaced columns, you can't just slide one over and have no problems happen. You'll have to do something with the beam above. But you could, for example, create a larger headered opening and then put in one post so you don't have too much depth of structure. You don't need too hefty of a beam. Or you could go to steel. Steel is more expensive. But if you have to have a column, rather than just having one lone column standing there kind of being in the way of things, I might create an anchor point for a piece of built-in cabinetry, or a place that you could put furniture up against by having, say, 3 of the same column in a row. 3 is better than 2. 4, 5, 6. You can put more of them. If the column itself is not a wildly expensive material, multiplying it out will always make it feel a little bit more purposeful, a bit more like it's screening 2 spaces from each other rather than just holding up the ceiling. So yeah, I would also think about, you could pair a column that's doing structural work with some slats made out of the same material that sort of have the same width but a thinner depth, the same depth but a thinner width, depending on which way you're facing. And then give it sisters. I would do the same thing, not only in an interior space, but often you'll have one post holding up a corner of a porch at the front of a house. And the instant way to add charm to that situation is to not remove that post or decorate that post or try to turn it into craftsman something with a whole bunch of rounding pieces, but just give it to friends the exact same style. And suddenly you're moving your eye in a direction. It's a little bit more interesting. You're just giving it some purpose. So, yeah, we'll flow from what is open concept into how do we make bearing walls go away. I'm running out of steam here. This has been really good. I'm talking so long. I need to take a drink of water. Anybody have a final question or a thought, a comment, something you want to share, a revelation from today? That would be really fun. Go for it.
So to the window question, I don't remember who had asked that, but at my last house, we had original windows, and I want to say 7 of the seals were broken. 3 were slot windows, and then 2 were just like your stand up and it comes down. And we got a glass company to come out and replace the glass, and it was so affordable.
Yeah.
And well.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Well, it's actually pretty hard for people to think of, because when something's wrong with your window, you look up window in the phone book, but it is often just a matter of replacing the glass. And it doesn't need to be, as you say, just glass. It can be a sealed vacuum glass piece. So you can get insulated glass. It is sometimes even possible for people who are worried about single pane windows. This is more complicated, less likely, but possible. If you've got single pane original windows and you wish they were double pane, talk to a glazier before you talk to a window replacement company. You might be able to change every window in the house for much less cost and construction demolition, throwing away all the trim on inside and outside, damaging the siding, just a whole bunch of rigmarole if you can just replace the glass. So maybe that's our little mid-century master plan win of sometimes the answer is do less, and isn't that wonderful? I want to thank you all for showing up today. This was so much fun. I love a chance to sort of popcorn ideas and answers to people. And if you think I had to do this more often, I don't know, send me an Instagram DM, write me an email about it, persuade me. I'll try to persuade my operations manager that it's a good use of our time. But also, if you enjoyed this, we would love to have you. We would love to have you join us and Michelle inside of the Ready to Remodel program, where we do this every month. And actually coming up in the next Remod Squad, we'll be doing it every 2 weeks, first Monday of the month and third Monday of the month from now until December. So plenty of chances to get your questions asked and also to hear other people's questions asked and share your own personal experiences, which is so valuable. Thanks, Erica, for validating that. I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you all go now, but I hope to see you on Saturday. And if you're not available, like there will be a replay available to check that out. And it's been such a pleasure to have a little glimpse into each of your mid-century homes. I wish you the best in your journey of remodeling them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marvelous. All right, take care. Well, that covered a lot of ground. I probably talked even faster on that call than I do on this podcast, where I constantly leave sticky notes over my desktop computer, reminding me to speak slowly and have a relaxed demeanor as I share every popcorn idea I have about mid-century choices and how to make good ones for your house. But I do think that there is value in finding not only my enthusiasm, but the enthusiasm of everybody that submitted a question to this office hours call. All of these people are our kindred. We are all a mid-mod remod squad together in the broader sense. And if you're looking for more community, if you're looking to find advice from and for and with other people who love their mid-century homes as much as you and I do, then I absolutely encourage you to show up for the live event I'm hosting Saturday, the 27th. This is 3 days from time of air at 11 a.m. Central. I'm going to be hosting an hour-long class, which will walk you through everything I have learned and believe about really well-tailored plans for remodels for mid-century homes, developed over helping hundreds of other mid-century homeowners to plan well for their own homes. That's going to be Saturday at 11 a.m. Central. And then after the hour-long class, I will stick around and answer everybody's question about the process, about planning, about finding contractors, about specifics of your house from structure to aesthetics. So if you've got questions you'd like answered, come and ask them at the live class. I would love to see you there. This episode was written and recorded by me, Della Hansman, and produced by Rebecca Rossi. If you'd like to support the show and mid-century homes in general, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. You can help other people find us when you leave a rating and review, or recommend us directly to a friend with a mid-century house. Find more of Mid-Mod Remodel on Instagram, YouTube, or pop right over to our website to check out our services. I would love to design a master plan for your home or teach you how to create one for yourself in my Ready to Remodel program. Thanks so much for listening to Mid-Mod Remodel. I love that you love your mid-century house. I love it too.